Okay, hello my friends. This is part 3 and the last part in a series of videos on what Black Moon Lilith is. And what we're looking at here is the motion of 4 planets. One is blue, one is red, one is yellow, and one is green. And it shows that as these planets get close to each other, they have a gravitational attraction to each other. And the way astronomers analyze this, the way they take account of this gravitational attraction to objects when they get close to each other, is they adjust the orbit of the planet to show the unperturbed orbit. So they look at all those gravitational effects as being something that can be erased, removed. You can remove all the gravitational effects by adjusting the orbit of the planet. And at the end of the second video, I discussed how that's very consistent with our modern ideas of gravity, that gravity is actually not a force, but it's a bending of space, and this adjustment to the orbit of the planets as planets get close to each other is showing the line of least resistance of the planet at that time. It's showing how space has got bent in relationship to the movement of the planet to that planet's comfort zone. It's again like a ball rolling down a mountain to the valley. This is where the planet has settled, and the orbit at that moment is showing the direction and the momentum and the pathway that is active at that moment. And this is called the osculating orbit. So what True Black Moon Lilith is it is the apogee of the osculating orbit of the moon. Let me say that again, and let me bring up this image of this basic elliptical path. So what is happening is that this path, this elliptical path, and right now this is set up as a planet going around the sun, but we can also look at this same image as, instead of the red thing being a planet, let's call it the moon, and the yellow thing here, we can call it the earth. So this is actually an image of any object going around any other object. And what's happening, to review some fundamental points here, is that this elliptical orbit of the moon is rotating slowly, 3 degrees 20 minutes every month, and that's moving the position of the perihelion and aphelion, or perigee and apogee, if we're talking about the moon, as we talked about. So when we're talking about the moon in relationship to the earth, it's called the apogee. So this apogee point, which is Black Moon Lilith, is moving about 3 degrees 20 minutes a month. And then as nearby objects disturb the path of the moon, and the main one is the sun, but there are other things that disturb it, it's changing this orbit, making it bigger and smaller, which is what we see in the video, where we see the osculating orbit. Osculating orbit means the orbit at that moment. You know, there's a very good description of it. Let me read it. I copied it onto the slide here. Let's see, I've got it here. Let me read this quote from the video that I showed you guys. The osculating orbit of an object in space is the gravitational Kepler orbit that it would have if perturbations were not present. That's a quote from the description of those videos that I've just shown you. Let me read it again. What is the osculating orbit? The osculating orbit of an object is the Kepler orbit that it would have if perturbations were not present. It removes the perturbations and shows what that undisturbed path of the planet actually is, because all of those gravitational effects of the nearby sun to the moon and any others that might be happening are simply bending space and creating the current path of the moon. So, if we use the astronomer's definition of what astronomers call the osculating Black Moon Lilith, so what makes more sense to you? Should we use the mean Black Moon Lilith, which is the apogee of the moon if there were no perturbations, right? If there was only the rotation of the moon's path, as that whole path rotates around, that gives us the mean Black Moon Lilith. Or should we use the osculating Black Moon Lilith, which is the apogee of the moon if we consider all perturbations to be changes in the orbit of the planet? So in astrology, we call it the True Black Moon Lilith. It's actually a misnomer. We should not call it the True Black Moon Lilith. The real name of Black Moon Lilith is the Osculating Black Moon Lilith. Osculating means the Black Moon Lilith based on the orbit that has removed all perturbations. But I think we should continue to use True Black Moon Lilith. It's actually not the right term, but I would rather say true than osculating, so it's just kind of convenient. But keep in mind that the true north node is true. We can verify the north node. In fact, I've done it myself. I verified that the true north node, and I've made videos about it, about that the true north node is true. It's where the path of the moon intersects the path of the earth. It is that intersection point. And we can use, I use spherical trigonometry to demonstrate that. There's no simple way using spherical trigonometry or anything else to validate these osculating orbits. The way that they are validated is that the actual position of the moon matches the calculations. The actual position of Jupiter matches the calculations. So doing these calculations, they're confirmed by the fact they actually predict the positions, and they make sense. Everything fits together. They were determined through calculating what the effect would be. So, they're logically deduced, and then they work. But they're not visual, you can't easily confirm it any other way. So it's really the osculating Black Moon Lilith, but let's continue to call it True Black Moon Lilith. I think that's fine. Okay, so which makes sense to you? Just intuitively, do you think we should use the mean or the osculating, or both, or neither? And so what my thoughts about it is this. Let's take a step back and think about what we do in astrology. We use the ascendant. We use tropical 0 Aries. They are abstractions. The ascendant is extremely abstract because the ascendant is the intersection of the celestial horizon with the ecliptic plane. Okay, the ecliptic plane has some, you might say, reality to it because that's where the Earth travels every year, and it does not move very much from year to year. So you could trace the path of the apparent path of the sun in the sky, and you could say, okay, it repeats every year. So you can point to it. But the horizon plane is a mathematical abstraction. The only time you would see the horizon plane is if you were out in the middle of the ocean with no land in sight. Then you have a celestial horizon. But any land has some texture to it, even if it's subtle. No land is perfectly flat. So it's an abstract, it's a mathematically determined phenomenon. It's what we call a plane that's tangent to the surface of the Earth. So these mathematical abstractions, non-physical things, are the basis of our astrology. So there are some people who say, we need to make astrology more visual. What do we see in the sky? Well, I'm not saying there's no validity to that, but I do say we do not want to make everything visual. Absolutely not. If you do that, get rid of the ascendant. Get rid of zero Aries. Get rid of all kinds of things that we rely on. So astrology is based on sacred geometry, a geometry, these forms that you can calculate mathematically, but don't actually exist in a tangible way. We know that because we use the ascendant, and the ascendant works. And it's a sacred geometry. It's a powerful geometry that is a force in our lives. That's what we understand as astrologers. And if we think of gravity as bending space, as physicists do, rather than a force, then we're looking at gravity as a sacred geometry. We're looking at the geometry of space and how space is curved. And we're looking at the osculating path of the planets and of the moon as the end result of the changing of the nature of space, that the structures in space, the design of space is changing, and the osculating orbit is showing how gravity is changing and bending space and creating the free-flowing movement of a planet. So it all fits together. So my guess is we want to use the True Black Moon Lilith. It's a valid and important point. I've been looking at Black Moon Lilith in charts for many months now, and looking at it, and I was surprised that it's making sense. And I wanted to study the astronomy more carefully because I hadn't thought it through carefully. And sure enough, it does make sense astronomically. And therefore, noticing that it has some validity is now less surprising to me, because now that I thought through it more clearly, yeah, it makes sense that it would be an important point. So finally, what does the True Black Moon Lilith do? What does it mean? Many people say Black Moon Lilith is associated with primitive drives. It's associated with the myths of Lilith, that people have for a long time wanted to bring in a different kind of moon, not this soft, nostalgic moon, but something, more powerful, deep, mysterious. Some people even look at Black Moon Lilith as a kind of dark, like a mala mujer, as you might say in Spanish. And I don't think that Black Moon Lilith is essentially some kind of dark force. I think that what it is it's a very special alternative view into the world that's using the other focal point of the sun. It's like a alter ego to our Earth as a reference point of looking at that. And I think from my observations and talking to other astrologers, excuse me, who use Black Moon Lilith, it seems to have to do with some very deep alternative perspective. It has to do with things like your favorite color, a favorite song, a favorite person, where something seems so transcendently pure and simple. I don't mean transcendent in some kind of like spiritual aspiration, but just the way that people in general have something special to them. The perfect house, the perfect setting, the perfect song, the thing that just seems so perfectly organized. It's like you're seeing it from another heavenly viewpoint. and it does seem to be emotionally charged and strong. We will know as we do more research, and what we need more than anything is extreme case sampling research. I'm sure that one of the vibrational astrologers will be doing it soon. You can just pull up the charts of people who have Sun conjunct Black Moon Lilith, or Moon, or whatever you want to do with the smallest orb. If somebody has Sun conjunct True Black Moon Lilith with a 1 minute orb or 0 minute orb, and you get 5 or 6 people who have biographies, you will start to see the consistent quality. Because when that orb is only 1 or 2 minutes, every vibration that says the sun is in, Black Moon Lilith is there with it. So when those orbs are very, very tiny, they do color your life. Doesn't mean it's the main, most primary thing in your life, but it should be obvious, should be clear. So the extreme case sampling research has worked every time, clarified, and I think now that we have thought through the astronomy, the basis of it, we know what we're talking about, we know that so many people use it and find it to be valid, and it looks like it doesn't take a lot of work to see that True Black Moon Lilith does have an impact. I think we're ready to start narrowing down exactly what it does through a controlled research study like extreme case sampling, and then continue to use what we learn in our consultations to further confirm it. I think that's my last slide. Yes, it is. Thank you very much for listening, my friends. God bless. Namaste.